Welcome to this Made Smarter Innovation Network webinar and networking. It's not just a webinar. So this week we've got a theme of continuous improvement. This is the third in a series of 12 of these events, covering across sort of various different topics and themes. 4 speakers at all of those events, so lots of things to hear about and lots of people to learn from as we go through these events. So I'm Kevin Hollis. I'm the knowledge transfer manager in the manufacturing team. There's a few of my manufacturing colleagues on this morning, Nicole and Nilam, I can see. So yeah, I'll introduce KTN a little bit and then I'll tell you about the webinar. Just a sec. Try that. So for those of you that are new to KTN, KTN exists to connect innovators. And that might be with other expertise, with people that they can do a collaborative project with. It might be connecting you to funding or other aspects, introducing the technology base, the RTOs, the catapults, the universities. And we want to help you accelerate your innovation and get brilliant ideas to market faster and improve the UK as a result of doing that. I'm struggling with my slides. One of the things we do within that is we create innovation networks where there's a strategic need for some sort of focused networking activity. So these innovation networks run across sort of various emerging technologies, and there was the opportunity to do this around Made Smarter. And so that's what's brought us all together today, is trying to build a community of manufacturers, tech developers, the support infrastructure around that to make Made Smarter a success. So what is the Made Smarter Innovation Network? Well, Made Smarter started with a review that was headed by Jürgen Meyer, then chair of Siemens, back in 2016-17. And the conclusion of that review was the UK manufacturing sector should adopt more technology. And that led to the Northwest Made Smarter pilot that you might have seen. And at the moment, that's been scaled up and rolled out to the Northeast, Yorkshire and Humber, West Midlands, and it's continuing in the Northwest. They also said, you know, the UK manufacturing sector needs to develop leadership and skills, and Ingenuity is an organisation that's leading on that. And then the key thing for us was they said, we've got an opportunity as a country to be innovative in this space, to develop our own solutions, prove them, and to some degree export them as well. And so that's where the innovation focus comes from. Within the innovation program, this is the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund, Made Smarter. There's these various strands of how the money's been spent. So the total funding is 300 million. When you include the co-investment from businesses. So this is split into various competitions and streams. And you might have seen some of these. I think some of you might even have funding under some of them. So yeah, you can see the picture. So in terms of collaborative R&D, there was a fast start competition sort of 18 months ago. There was a digital supply chain competition last autumn. There's going to be a smart factory competition at some point this year. There'll be some international funding for collaboration across borders. There's £20 million gone into research centres, so for slightly lower TRL developments. Digital accelerator, so the digital catapult ran a £1 million accelerator earlier this year. There's going to be more of those. There's work going on with standards, with BSI, etc. Innovation hubs is just being contracted at the moment. So some of the RTOs are going to run, that's research technology organizations, catapults, those kind of things. Some of those are going to run innovation hubs, and there'll sort of be some cascade funding for businesses within that to prove things out in a safe space where you can play before you do it in the factory. So that's what the ISCF looks like. in terms of where we're at now, so with our network, we're sort of building plans, we're doing these events. This is our initial outreach, get you interested in what's going on. The slide shows all the KTN people that are involved in this. So quite a few. You might think this is confusing. It sort of is, but then KTN's here to do things that sort of demystify confusing areas. So if it was dead straightforward, you probably wouldn't need the network. And so across the top, we've got sort of the focused sectors for ISCF, and down the left, we've sort of got the technologies. But of course, these are all intermingled, and even the technologies are all intermingled. So, but sort of take away from that there's lots of people here to help you get the most out of the program. So without further ado, let's get into the thing you've probably all come for, which is to hear from our brilliant speakers this morning. So we've got 4 speakers. Paul and Sam have worked together on a particular thing, so they'll talk about that one after the other. And then Chris is in a related area, and Beth's from eFutures, based at QUB. So Paul, do you want to pull up your share and take over? So Paul is with a company called IVC Brunel. You might not have heard of them directly, but you've probably used their products. So I'll let Paul introduce them and take over. You okay to share, Paul?
Yeah. Morning. Hope you can all see my slides.
Yep, they're up, Paul.
Yeah, got them. Yeah. Morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm Paul Hughes. I'm currently head of projects at IVC Brunel. Previous to this, I was head of business improvement. Let's get my slides up. They want to work. Sorry, right. So IVC Brunel, we're a manufacturer, Europe's largest manufacturer of vitamin and mineral supplements, herbal medicines and licensed products. We don't have a particularly strong branded presence. You might have seen one of our brands, which is Vitstore, but most of the products we manufacture are for third-party retailers and also for contract customers. So if you take any vitamins and minerals routinely, you almost certainly take some of our product. Currently, we've got just over 500 employees. We're spread over 5 sites in the UK, but part of an international group. We've got a global market, so we export pretty much all over the world, really. We're exporting back into China. We're exporting to quite a strong presence in the Middle East, very strong presence in Northern Europe and Central and Eastern Europe. And we're just getting into the US as well. So we've got quite a lot of markets we export to. Got 5 shift patterns, so we run a 3-cycle shift during the week and back-to-back weekend shifts. And we've obviously, like most companies in the UK, we've got multi-language, so we've got a multilingual workforce. And you can see a wee bit of our sites there, and you can see some of the products that we do. Apologies. So specifically, problems we encountered, as you can, so did that slide change? I'm looking at. Right. Can you see the problem slide? Sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So specifically, the problems we encountered in our operations is very similar to many that I'm sure you guys will have come across. It's managing the training of new starters. It's simple things like, how on earth are you going to train somebody who's on weekend nights? How do you evaluate training success? How do you figure out if somebody's been successfully training? Simple things like, from an operations point of view, actually, if I've got 20 minutes spare, if I'm a supervisor and I've got 20 minutes spare, whose training can I check up with? Where's a quick list to say, who do I check up with? Other issues like preparing written instructions for fairly complex tasks. You can get really unstuck trying to write written instructions for things that really just a photo is the best way of evidencing it. And then getting these instructions across to multiple languages. So we had a whole host of different sorts of fairly standard issues across the business. On top of this, we're heavily audited by different auditing organisations such as the MHRA, British Retail Consortium, And with our customer base, we're also getting plenty of other audits as well. So typically we have about 20 audits a year, external audits a year in the business. This places a huge amount of burden on both the operations team and the quality team. And we were having real difficulty managing version control of documents, training out people to make sure they were trained against the latest version, just simply keeping on top of what we did. On top of that, we're implementing new technologies, new procedures. So you had a bit of a perfect storm where you were trying to do stuff relatively quickly, yet the systems we were operating simply couldn't manage it. And I put some pictures up there of files. We literally had files and files of paper documents and training matrices on the walls, such as this one. And it's extremely difficult to keep that sort of level of integration up to date. So in my role of business improvement, previous role as business improvement manager, strange enough, I wasn't too pleased with that. I shouldn't be with the role. So I called the quality team and the operations team together, and we had a bit of a chat about what we could do. And at the end of the day, we came away thinking, well, the real big issue was the management of the system, not the desire to do things differently. We all wanted to do things differently. We wanted the system to work. We wanted people to be trained in the latest procedures. But we wanted to make sure that we could manage it. We had to be able to demonstrate that we could manage it. So we came away with a meeting with no answers. We couldn't figure out how we could do it. So then, serendipity, one of my favourite words, but quite by chance, I had an unplanned and fortunate discovery. The following day after this meeting, or very shortly afterwards, Sam dropped me a note and said, we've got this bit of software here which you might be interested in. So I had a look at it and thought, might do what we want to do. Called Sam in, we had a chat, and we had a really good look at it. And broadly speaking, it does pretty much exactly what we want. I don't know whether you guys have had a chance to have a look at it online or some of the demos there, but it addresses our specific own issue with training. Because if you take a step back, you've got all these different documents within the organization. Who actually owns them? You know, the quality team shouldn't own operational documents. Operational documents should be owned by the operational team, with the quality team overseeing the control and making sure they're applied properly. Now, the problem we had was because there were so many documents, the quality team was doing the administration of it and effectively owning it. They couldn't allow us to develop fast enough. So this turned it on its head. So what you can see in this slide here is you can see, if I'm an operator, I can literally drive in and say, actually, what do I need to know? And you can put filters on. This can be done either through a PC or for a tablet. You can put filters on it, which will show you, actually, here's the documents you should know to do your role. It also covers off some of the other issues we had around ownership of documents again. I think you can see one here. This is how you use a loading ramp for a container. So within this, you've got simple things like the button on the left-hand side there is a change request. So if you're the operator doing that role, and you say, hang on a minute, that's not right. That's not how we do it. You can submit a change request, which goes through to the owner of the document and says, John's asked for you to have a look at this document. He doesn't believe it's right. And they put a little bit of text in it. And if you think, actually, that's completely right, you can ask for updating of that version immediately. It moves straight on to, if approved, it will go into version 2, and then people are trained in version. You need to do the training on version 2. So it's picked up a lot of things. It's got simple photos in there. You can embed videos in it. It's ticked off a lot of the issues we had, and it has been successfully audited now. It's undertaken about 15 audits, and we haven't had any comments from auditors about it, which is always a good sign. And the team within the business are very pleased with it. So it's gone very well. In terms of implementation, it took us 20 weeks to implement the system from the point of where we bought it to go live in all areas. So that included purchase of tablets and cases. That's the tricky bit. System implementation on site, Wi-Fi test and improving a Wi-Fi signal throughout site. Our validation, internal validation and test documents to prove it was secure. Doing some pilot testing, transferring then of all our procedures and work instructions, which consisted of about 1,000 or 1,200 documents, transferring those over, and then training both the supervisors and the operators in the use of the system. So pretty quick within 20 weeks. We've had the system loaded on site. We don't use a cloud-based, just for our own personal security integrity, but it's working pretty well. And in terms of some of the feedback we've had from our internal team, our quality systems team really like it. It means they can issue and control version control documents very slickly. Our operations team, they do like it, but obviously it then shows how much training they need to do, which is a separate issue. And audit, I've said about audits, the audit process, it comes through clean with our issues. So that's why we chose the system. That's the sort of benefits it's given us. Any questions? Hand over to you now, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul. Yeah, we'll come back to questions with everybody together at the end. So I'll introduce Sam now, if that's okay. So thank you for that, Paul. That's really good. Set the scene. Oh, Sam's a star with Zoom. He's up already. So Sam is from Starling Solutions, and as you've heard from Paul, they've worked together on this deployment project. So Sam's going to tell us about Starling. Sam, over to you.
Thanks. Can you see my screen, Kevin? Is that working?
Yeah, it's good.
All right, great. Well, good morning, everyone, and once again, welcome to the event. Thanks to the KTN for hosting us, and thank you, Paul, for your presentation. It's been great to work with you over the last few years, and also to just to again be reminded of some of the benefits and why we do what we do. So I represent Starling, and as you've seen, we offer a platform for manufacturers to simplify the management of procedures, such as work instructions and standard operating procedures and training. So the platform's designed to be very intuitive and to automate the associated manual processes with training and documentation. So I'm just going to take you through a bit about how our system works, and just give you a bit of an overview of that. Paul's sort of shared how they benefited from it, why they went to it, and how they implemented it. So we'll just give you a bit more of an overview of the system. So a lot of manufacturers are reliant on paper and very manual, error-prone processes, as Paul was kind of explaining at the start. So we help to digitalize and streamline the process, improving efficiency and standardization. So we'll just look at initially what we'll dig into some of these problems a little bit more that Paul's been discussing with that traditional paper-based process. And this slide just outlines a few of the people that are involved. So we've got the first person is the operator. That's the person that's receiving the documents, reading through them, and then doing the task. So they waste time trying to find these printed documents. They might be in a system of filing cabinets. They've got to locate the correct document, or just go off previous knowledge. The documents they're reading can often be very wordy and difficult to understand. And as well, if you've got people of different languages, that can be another challenge. And this lack of understanding can ultimately result in people working to different standards and there being inconsistency. And when asked to read through an updated document, you get a piece of paper explaining something, you then get another piece of paper which has got some differences. It's difficult to work out exactly what's changed and to make sure that people have gone through that information. So in the editor in the process, they spend a lot of time creating these documents, formatting them in Word. It can be really fiddly, kind of squashing all your pictures in, trying to get them to fit onto as few pages as possible. But that can then lead to a loss in the ease of understanding for the operator. They then have to go through the relevant sign-off process, getting people to sign off to approve a document before issuing it out for people to then be trained against. And as well, because this process is quite cumbersome, it means that changes don't always get made. Quality assurance, they have a kind of managing the risk around version control. They have to track all these documents, so they spend a lot of time doing that. As Paul talked about, that kind of the system of files. I know that when audits came up, they've got to take all these files to the right room to then go through with the auditor. so it become quite a task. And then they need to notify all the relevant staff of updates. So when a document gets updated, you've got to ensure that everyone's trained, and you've got people working different shifts, people off sick, people on holiday. So actually making sure that all the relevant people are signed off against it is really challenging. And as well for management, they're planning production, training people, they need to have live data to be able to do that well. So that they can often be firefighting issues rather than make improvements, so chasing the relevant information. And with all these different steps in the process, there's a number of risks. There's a risk of non-compliance in an external audit, which can result in financial penalties. There's a risk of sending out non-conforming products and damaging customer relationships. And as well, because these changes might not get made because the process is so cumbersome, it can mean that only significant changes get incorporated. So you miss out on various continual improvement steps. And that can lead to operators practice distancing from the documented standard because they know this is a better way of doing it. It's just not been updated yet. So they do what they think is best. So managing that can be tricky. So our software removes the manual steps in the process to bring some automation and drive efficiency. And that means you can make more at a better quality. So it speeds up the process and improves your quality of training, particularly through using things like videos. And ultimately that can lead to reduction in errors and rejects and deviations. So a bit more about our software, so you can see it. It's video in action. It provides a very simple step-by-step format for creating instructions on how to perform a task. You can use videos, which significantly improve communication. And often the people creating the documents have a lot of technical understanding. So again, videos help to make communicating the basics in a process much simpler. And as well, you can record all of your training and manage document control within the system. And that integration between the training and documents is really key, so that when documents are updated, your training gets updated as well. So it's kind of a few other areas. It centralizes all of your procedures and training into one place, so it becomes easy to navigate and locate the relevant information, keeping it all in one place, so you don't need to search through filing cabinets, and it means that all your data is live as well. You can update procedures on the go, so someone can use a tablet to document a process, taking photos and videos as they walk through it, and then they can make the change and submit it for approval all from the shop floor. They don't need to go back to their desk to make changes. They can do it all in situ. So it manages all of your document control. So your version history is there. So you don't need to rely on physical signatures on paper and keeping masters that way. It just automates the process and helps to ensure that you're following the correct disciplines. As well, as Paul referenced, it helps to drive continuous improvement. So getting operators' requests, their changes, they can make suggestions, and that helps to get their buy-in and ensure that the document reflects reality. I'm just going to skip through this one for time. Just another quote from another customer. They saw significant improvement in reject, and a big part of this was obtaining buy-in from their staff. So we had a foreman who was 62 years old and reticent to use digital technologies. He hadn't had an office job, so wasn't used to using computers, and wasn't keen to move away from paper. But we worked with him to understand how the system works, and he became a champion. And I remember him taking a tablet off someone, giving training to one of his team, and he took it off them and did the teaching himself and explained it. So he was taking ownership of the process. And as a result, they saw a broader buy-in, and he went from moving from a position of trying to do things his own way and taking feedback as criticism to engaging in the process of continuous improvement by working together to find the best route forwards. So if you'd like to find out any more details, then my details are on the slide, and our web link will be circulated after the event, and there'll be an opportunity for Q&A a bit later on. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. That's great. Good to sort of get the other side of the story there. I think there's some real big advantages in in how you manage the updates. I particularly like the ease with which you can get people to contribute and not end up with the manager's version of the procedure. So yeah, that's great. If we move on to Chris, if you can share your screen, Chris. So Chris Iveson is from FourJaw, which is a very young company set up in Sheffield, with links with the AMRC. So Chris, you want to take over?
Yeah, hi guys, can you see my screen there or not?
Yeah, that's good.
Good. So hope everyone is well. I'm Chris, I'm from FourJaw Manufacturing Analytics. Like Kevin said, we are a new company and we're soon to launch a new product, literally in a couple of weeks. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit of a story about how we came to be, and also give you some information around the product that we're about to launch. So I kick off with this picture of myself and my co-founder. So we both used to work at the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre, part of the University of Sheffield, and that's where we first met. Robin used to be an entrepreneurially minded software developer, and I was a like-minded commercialization manager. And that meant that my job was to go around the AMRC and to collect the technologies that the AMRC had developed and work out how we could push them out into industry somehow. And one of those ways you can do that is through starting up new businesses. So Robin had developed a good piece of machine monitoring software, so CNC machine monitoring, that he developed. And he was connecting it up to CNC control systems to extract the data created during production. And he fed that data into an analytics platform that he'd developed to show what the machines were doing at any point in time. Now, he developed this specifically for the AMRC researchers to help inform their research. But the AMRC is quite an open shop, and there were quite a lot of industry visitors who would visit regularly and have a walk around the shop floor. And whenever someone saw it, they'd say, "That's great, can I get it in my shop?" To which the answer at the time was, well, not really, because it's a piece of research software. But what it kind of indicated was that there was a real need from industry for a system like this. So Robin and I decided, we kind of hit it off, and we decided to work together to build a business around this technology. So we found some early customers local to Sheffield who were willing to test the system out. And the early days of installation were quite interesting, to say the least. So they consisted of multiple site visits from mainly Robin. It was very time consuming to get the customers set up. The CNC machines themselves, they come of different ages, different brands, different ways of speaking to our platform. And so we had to integrate with each of them individually. And it was all quite a challenge, and it resulted in large upfront costs for the customer and lots of disruption. And this prohibited SMEs from getting involved. So the larger companies were kind of, they might be able to spend the time and effort and money to get set up, but the SMEs couldn't. And there's a huge amount of SMEs who need this sort of technology on their shop floor. So we started to look at, well, what does our competition do? And we realized that actually the majority of them are also doing exactly the same thing. And so we thought, you know what, there's got to be a better way. So we went back to the drawing board and we thought about how we could make getting started with your smart factory journey as simple and as inexpensive as possible for SMEs. So we decided that the best way was to move all the smarts behind our platform up into the cloud. And this enabled us to develop a completely plug and play device that any manufacturer can get set up with in a matter of minutes. And so next month, we're going to be proud to be launching our Machinelink. So the first thing to say is that it's completely agnostic to any CNC machine of any brand, of any age, and of any size. It costs under £180 for one of them, and you install it on one CNC machine, and then it connects and it collects data during production, sends it up into the cloud. From there, the manufacturer can start exploring their data, which is what you see in the background on the tablet. We offer a choice of software subscriptions alongside, and the kind of lowest, the kind of starter subscription is the entirely free light subscription. And the Machinelink itself uses a sensor-based approach. So it uses current monitoring technologies, which means that there's no way it can interfere with any production, and it can connect to any machine, because as long as you've got power going into your machine, you can hook it up. So there's the whole saying that if the spindle's turning, then you're earning. And our platform focuses completely on getting the most out of your machines, as that translates directly into productivity. And we allow manufacturers to visualize that productivity via tablet computers, and we can collect reasons for downtime from the operators, and that enables the production team to work together to maximize uptime. So we've deliberately built it for SMEs. SMEs tend to be quite busy people, and so we've made it so that you can buy a Machinelink, we can ship it out to you in a couple of days, and then your maintenance engineer can install it in a matter of minutes. That means that the risk to the customer is actually quite low. So the competitors, our competitors, they tend to charge lots of money, typically tens of thousands of pounds up front, and then there's a lengthy installation process, like we say, whereas what we're saying is, give us under £180, we'll ship one to you in the post, and you can get set up and see how it goes. And then we offer a series of flexible contracts for manufacturers to actually get going. And it's completely scalable. So you can buy one, you can buy 10, you can buy 100, and they'll all fit onto our platform and give a completely uniform view of your shop floor. So despite launching in a couple of weeks' time with Machinelink, we have had customers hooked up for a while, and we've got a number of success stories. So Durham Duplex, we've got a nice little quote at the top here. They initially tried out our platform on 2 grinding machines, and as soon as they hooked it up, they spotted that for the first hour of every morning, their grinding machines were doing nothing. They would come in and they weren't getting any productivity. So the production manager, he went and spoke to the operator and said, why is this happening? And the operator says, well, these machines, they need an hour to warm up before they're ready to start manufacturing. So I come in the morning, I switch the machines on, get them in a warm up state, go and have a cup of tea, and then I start machining. And these machines have been operating like that for 20 years, and nobody knew that that's what happened. So the production manager just goes, well, that's fine. I'll ask the guy on the night shift to switch them on an hour before you come in. And instantly there's a 12.5% improvement on productivity right there. And so quite often, the insights that we give are they're not rocket science. It's just being able to unveil what actually happens and being able to give the entire production team visibility of what's happening on the shop floor. Now, Durham Duplex thought, right, we're going to see how far we can take this. So they focused on those 2 machines, and through looking at the data and then making improvements, and we can't lay claim to a lot of those improvements that, it might be, say, changing the diameter of the grinding wheel so that you don't have to dress it as much. But through actually looking at the data and focusing on it, they managed to get an up to 5 times improvement in number of parts and the same production costs, which is absolutely amazing for them. So what they've done is they've then started to roll it out across their entire factory, which is a great win for us. I guess another one is the middle quote. So there's a company called CBE Plus, and they're based down in Chesterfield. They again tried it out on a small number of machines, and they had a key production or a key order, and it was a 600 off order, and they were struggling to meet the deadline. So they had to pick up the phone and tell their customer, look, I think we're going to deliver late. Their customer was obviously unhappy because they needed it. So they looked at the data coming off on the FourJaw platform, and they spotted that actually it was a multi-pallet machine, which means you can load one pallet whilst you're machining another and then just swap them over. But they could see from data that the operators weren't using the multi-pallet functionality of the machine. So obviously they implemented that, and they effectively saw a free part, as they put it, every 6 minutes, and they delivered earlier than they would have done, and their customer was happy, and obviously they were happy. Again, they're now looking at scaling up across their factory, and they've got a few other nice little case studies like that. So, and then obviously the bottom one is just a nice quote from Steve Foxley, who's the CEO of the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre, who obviously supports everything that we're doing, which is great. So I hope that gives just a little overview as to what we do, as to who we are, as to how we do it, and obviously happy to take any questions at the end.
Thanks, Chris. That's another interesting talk. Those numbers at the end are great.
Yeah, we're excited about that.
That insight that you get from that is brilliant. So yeah, we're going to move on to the final speaker, which is Beth McEvoy from eFutures. So if you want to build fancy machine monitoring kit and you need sensors and electronics and things, then you might need to know who eFutures are. So that's my little link to what Beth is going to talk about. So Beth, if you're ready.
Thanks very much, Kevin, and good morning, everyone. Very pleased to be here. Yeah, so eFutures is funded by the UK Research and Innovation Council. We're halfway through a 4-year grant. It's national in terms of UK, and it was originally set up to cover around the 35 universities that are major in electronic systems research, and has increasingly evolved to have a concentration on industry, including SMEs and international partners. To give you a brief background, the PI, the principal investigator on eFutures, is Professor Roger Woods. He has a long expertise in what we might broadly call computer architecture, including high performance computing, and increasingly embedded AI, which I'll touch on slightly later, for data analytics and also for manufacturing, and has close collaboration with industry. For example, has worked for the likes of Xilinx. We work cross-border with partners in the Republic of Ireland, as well as Europe, increasingly Asia and the USA. There we go. Okay, so a little bit more background here you'll see on the slide. We are looking to the next generation of electronic systems, and we term it electronic systems deliberately. And we're looking for the next generation of researchers in this area who are going to advance technology, industry, and yes, as part of that, hopefully manufacturing. We use electronic systems as our term because it's essentially a facilitating technology, or what we now often call an enabling technology. Any evolution within electronic systems at a fundamental level tends to lead to novel applications, and it tends to lead to applications across a wide variety of sectors. We know there's been much focus, and rightly so, on software historically, but computer science innovations really require hardware underpinning. And we're seeing that. You'll have heard me mention embedded AI, for example. We're now seeing a renewed focus on hardware for cybersecurity, especially as the Internet of Things becomes more and more pervasive. Embedded AI itself has the potential to have a huge impact for manufacturers, but that's just a small part of our focus. You'll see there on the slide, it says a broad area, and it really is. I'll give you an example. We have a large investment of capacity, time, and money in healthcare technologies coming out of our researchers, some resulting in spin-offs for diagnostics. There's been involvement in the COVID-19 effort. We're interested in what we might call, and it's a very long-winded term, neuromorphic computing, maybe brain-inspired computing would be more apt. And have commissioned a major international review into the UK capability in this area. We're also very interested in digital manufacturing from the point of view of things like digital twins, anything you need sensors for. When we're thinking around the health monitoring of production lines as well, or what was broadly called before things like structural health monitoring increasingly applies to factories, as we've seen come out of Germany. And as Kevin mentioned, yes, the sensors are always at the forefront. So we create connections with industry, as well as awarding grants, both for academics, but also they often have industrial partners on board for these grants. They're smaller amount grants on purpose, and that's because we want to create prototypes out of them, or we want data to be collected that is introductory and can then inform a larger high value proposal to the research councils, or even for travel for enabling a test bed for some new technology. In terms of the connections we make, I'll have mentioned international and national ones. We are a national network. I'm based here in Belfast at Queen's. Queen's is interesting in terms of university and industry collaborations. We do have the highest amount of spin-outs nationally of any university. And here in the north of Ireland, we do have a concentration of key industries who are practiced and experienced, really, I think quite unusually so, in really making use of the research capability from the universities here. Including a large concentration in their manufacturing processes. So you'll have heard names like Seagate, Artemis Technologies, Randox, the GES Group. I think Lorraine Farrell is here today from that. And we also have a world-class cybersecurity expertise, which again looks increasingly to electronic systems to inform its evolution. So in terms of creating and facilitating new opportunities and nurturing connections, we think that as a facilitating technology, electronic systems needs to always be working across disciplines, and that's the final point on this slide. It's the only way, in my opinion, that research is going to go, rightly so. We just need to look at the latest Horizon Europe funding calls, which will inform the highest quality research across the continent for the next decade, which really demands in all their calls a transdisciplinary approach. And also when we're thinking about industrial and real world applications, looking at the new UK Research and Innovation Council's strategy, which is asking for research that will solve real world problems and improve civic society. Okay, so I mentioned that we do run events. These are frequent, and you'll see 2 complementary ones in terms of manufacturing up right now that are coming up. Traditionally, when we talk about manufacturing and electronics, it's been about how can we manufacture electronics. That doesn't happen an awful lot. We are quite interested in thinking about how electronic systems can inform and evolve manufacturing processes themselves, including smart or digital manufacturing. Thinking again, I mentioned before Germany, when we think about industry 4.0 out of there and things that Siemens have done, they have made use of an extensive amount of electronic systems in making their factories smart, which, you know, I'm sure many people are aware of the stats that have come out of that in terms of improved productivity and how many products they can offer. You'll have also heard me mention actually digital twins before and Artemis. So one of the speakers at this event is Mark Gillen, who's the COO of Artemis Technologies. Last month, Artemis announced a digital twin, or an MHIL, so mechanical hardware in the loop simulator. Artemis wants to develop world-class high-speed zero-emission ferry, water taxi, and they are going to develop this using this simulator, using digital twins, an extensive amount of sensors in it to create basically the physical forces of water and waves, to train their staff, and they don't have to build a thing. They haven't built anything yet that's physical. So that's very interesting. Thinking about another element of electronic systems and manufacturing, we have Alessandra Caggiano from the University di Napoli, who's going to speak, as well as Alessandro Simeone, who is at Shantou in Guangdong in China, and they are going to speak about intelligent cloud manufacturing platforms, I think with a case study on sheet metal, but again, just looking at how electronic systems can be of use in this area and have been of use. We've partnered on that with Connected Everything, who you may know because they are the digital manufacturing network and well worth connecting with if you haven't already. I will post their details in the chat afterwards. Briefly, my major interests in this area in terms of smart manufacturing are probably around scalability. They're around interoperability, so how data is exchanged in a usable and a useful way, and what hardware we might need underneath that to underpin it, and also deployability. So I think especially for SMEs, often we're very concentrated on getting to a TLR, to a technology level ready. And I would like to see something in tandem with that, that we're getting to a deployability level ready while that TLR is evolving. So that's just our contact details. I'll also post them in the chat. eFutures is open to anybody to join. You don't have to be working as an academic. It's free, and joining it means that you can avail of all the opportunities and be kept aware of them. So thank you very much. And I'm not going to stop sharing, Kevin. I'm going to wait till you take over.
Thanks, Beth. That was great. We're going to do the panel Q&A now. So I don't know if you want to pop those bits in the chat just while we get everybody going with some questions. So yeah, I'm not sure my Q&A slide adds a great deal. Paul and Sam and Chris, are you all back on ready to answer some questions as well? So if anybody wants to put questions in the chat, you can do that now. If you want to stick your hand up and come off mute and just ask the question, that's also fine. At the bottom of your screen, you'll have a control to raise your hand. I'm struggling to remember the name of it. Anita will chip in. So, Paul, I've got, just to get us started, I wondered if you'd quantified return on investment around this. You sort of talked qualitatively about lots of benefits.
It's difficult to quantify return on investment because it's something we had to be doing anyway. But probably the easiest way to justify it is to look at we've managed to keep the quality systems team. We had 2 people administering documents, and we would probably be up to a team about 3 or 4 now, just to try and manage that. And we've managed to bring it down to 1. So in terms of productivity, you'd say, that's just a less straightforward overhead burden. In terms of that, we've reduced the overhead burden on the business by a factor of 1. That person's moved more into a sort of a validation activity, which has helped us out as well in terms of demonstrating the capability of our equipment. So that would be our return on investment, which is, that's less than a year's payback, far less than a year's payback in terms of the investment, just releasing 1 person.
Okay. So well worth.
Yeah.
So we've got a raised hand from Esan. Do you want to come off mute and ask the question?
Hello. My question is for Chris. As we are on SME and we are working on metal manufacturing systems, we have different kind of machines. We are not just CNC machines. We have old press machines, new press machines, CNCs, and all different kind of machines. Is this system of FourJaw capable to be integrated with all of these systems with different kind of PLC system that is installed in each of them?
Yeah, so originally we were, like I say, integrating with the control systems that talk to the machines, which was very complicated. We decided to go to a sensor-based approach, and the sensors that we used are current clamps. And so we have 2 current clamps, one which, for a CNC machine, it fits around the spindle motor going into the machine, and then one going into the total incomer into the machine. And from there, we've got a series of algorithms that analyze the data to then determine if it's in a productive state or if it's in a non-productive state. I guess the short way of saying it is, if we can determine from the power requirements of the machine whether it's being productive or not, then yes, we probably can. So being very honest with you, during R&D, we had them hooked up to an office kettle. So, we can hook them up to various different types of machines. We're focusing on CNC machines because that's where we started. But yeah, if you're interested in slightly different applications, then I'm more than happy to have a kind of an offline chat with you if you like. Make sense?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think we've got quite a similar question in the chat, actually. What kind of sensors are connected?
Yeah.
Current sensing, essentially, I guess.
Current monitoring, yeah. I probably should have brought one with me, but I didn't.
Yeah, no worries. Sam, I was wondering as well, what kind of opportunities, conversations are you hoping to start on the back of the conversation today and the opportunity?
Well, some continued conversations, and then yeah, if there's new people wanting to, I guess, to pick up the conversation, to, I guess, have a review of their existing process, look at how they can bring improvement and automation. Very happy to have those conversations as well. Always looking to work with different partners in different areas. So open to conversations. I think I put my LinkedIn link in the chat, so people are welcome to connect through there or drop me an email.
Yeah, what sort of size companies sort of is a good size range for you?
It varies really. On the smaller end, 20, 30 employees, up to 1,000, 2,000, that kind of scale.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. So Francesco's asking Chris about the pricing and the monetizing of the continuous monitoring.
Yeah. So obviously, we don't just give you a device and that's it. So we have a number of software plans. The core ones really is that there's a light plan, and that enables companies to get up and running and to test the system out with very, very little commitment. And so if they buy up to three machine links, then they can have 3 light plans alongside, and that enables the light plan completely free. If they then want to go beyond three CNC machines, or if they want the full functionality of the full platform, then we offer the Pro plan, which is $59.99 per machine per month. If you want tablets next to the CNC machines themselves, then we can unlock machine mode, and that enables, that's $14.99 per machine per month. I should say that our website is in the next week or so going to be completely refreshed, and all this detail will be on there.
Yeah, you're kind of at quite a fast-moving, kind of evolving stage, aren't you?
It's mental. It's exciting.
Very good. Paul, I was wondering, beyond the stuff that you're doing with Sam, what are some of the other digital opportunities in IVC? What's the business like? I think you said the other day growth is huge at the moment.
Yeah, we're in the process of trying to do two new custom technologies every year. So 2 new different types of technology we're trying to implement and launch through the business and offer for sale. So we're trying to get to a position where we can be a one-stop shop for a healthcare customer, so we can provide them all the different types of products they may want for vitamin delivery and the different packaging types as well. So there's obviously a lot of development. We're customer led, but we've also we're an operations business. We take a demand and turn it into a product. So we've got to be fairly cute in terms of how we manage our operation systems as well. So in terms of the factory, we've got some production line monitoring equipment that we've got. Probably now we've got over 20 packing lines in the facility. So we've got monitoring equipment on all those packing lines to record the speeds, downtime, uptime, fault recognition and diagnosis, as well as fairly simple electronic systems we use within the company to enable our business to function better.
Yeah, and when you're competing for work, I was also interested. Where are the other factories that you're competing with?
Where our competitors? Or, yeah. Is it within the UK market? There's a few UK competitors, but globally, it's a bit easier actually. There's lesser competition, so it seems as though the UK and Northern Europe have got most of the manufacturing of vitamins and minerals. So if you want to expand into Africa, Middle East and stuff like that, you're in a good place to do it because the technology doesn't exist there. Obviously, you've got to get past your trade tariffs and exports and stability data, but yeah, it's a good position to be in.
Yeah, good stuff. Chris, I'll ask you the same question as Sam. What's a perfect sort of opportunity from today look like for you?
Is in the perfect customer size?
Yeah, what stage they're at, maybe their maturity in terms of IT.
So typically CNC machine shops with Wi-Fi. Typically we would want, we're aiming for SMEs, although if large companies come along, then of course we'll have a discussion with them. But typically it's the SMEs who understand they've got a productivity problem, who don't really understand how they can solve it. Some of our customers, they'll say, look, before we had your system, we thought that we were always busy. The shop floor was always buzzing and we were always busy. We hooked it up and we saw, say, machine monitoring rates lower than 10%. 10% utilization. So 90% of the available time, those CNC machines weren't productive. And so typically it's the people who understand that they've got a problem and don't know what to do about it. They're the ones that we want to speak to.
Cool, thank you. Sam, does the system cover HR management, such as leave management, things like
that? Good question. No, it doesn't. At the minute, it's focused on on that from a HR perspective on kind of training, competency management on that side of it, rather than sort of a broader HR package. Yeah.
I guess there are quite a few providers for those kind of things.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of kind of HR sort of management systems out there, but I think you'll find out, as Paul kind of highlighted, it's quite different to what else is out there in terms of managing the training and documentation on the shop floor.
Yeah, cool. Chris, you've really piqued Francesco's interest in the business model. He's now asking how you came up with the pricing of the monthly subscriptions.
Yeah, pricing
don't say anything too commercial, but
yeah, pricing is a very interesting subject. So yeah, obviously we've got lots of business plans that go on in the background, and effectively what it came down to is what value do we believe that we deliver. Now, obviously $59.99 per machine per month. We don't have to deliver a huge amount of productivity increase for our platform to pay for itself. So obviously that was a key thing that we wanted to do. Once we get more customers in, we can start pulling together return on investment figures. So we would say, look, it's $59.99 per machine per month. You pay for yourself in one day, and then the other 29 days of manufacturing in that month is an entirely free system. The only other thing to look at is what our competition does, which we did, and we believe that we're competitive. So that's how we arrived at what we arrived at.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Beth, I was wondering for the non-academics in the audience, you talked about opportunities for early career researchers. What's sort of the broader definition around that and the thinking? What does an early career researcher look like?
Well, that's a good question, Kevin. We normally put it at anything from postdoc, so having finished your PhD, and it could be right up to, it ties in very much with promotions, right? Okay, so I'd say the first decade of your career. I wouldn't want to label anyone as an early career researcher if they're in that 10 years, but they're very welcome to self-identify as one.
Okay. And would they be getting much exposure to industry while they're...
No, not normally. So what we've done, for example, from a Queen specific point of view, but not nationally as a network, is we do have many PhDs that are tied to industrial placements, and that wouldn't be uncommon. My concern is what happens afterwards. So if you finish a PhD, you might go and work for industry, that's fantastic. If you stay in academia, what often then happens at postdoc level is that industry exposure or collaboration kind of evaporates. Which is an odd thing to happen because they're consistently evolving as academics and researchers and often have been well trained in practical applications. So we're looking to kind of bridge that current existing gap.
Yeah, so that network between industry and academia really helps then.
It does, because often there's a bit like when I talked about multidisciplinary work, the reason that's so important is because if you think about a design process, you can design something to solve a problem, right? And it can solve that problem and you think job done. But there are a myriad of holes in the potential solution to this problem that would not be there if at that design stage there'd been communication with, say, end users, whether that's patients or medical clinicians, whether that are people in industry. Even if it goes, this is great, the reason we can't roll it out is here. We'd have been able to tell you about that if you'd spoken to us at this stage, or you've designed something for rollout in sub-Saharan Africa, and there's a very specific reason that emerges at the end of that process that's an impediment to it. So it's these kind of, I would like to facilitate better conversations, better collaborations at the earliest stages, so we end up with the best products possible.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Beth. There's a question from me, which I wasn't expecting. So as an SME in the West Midlands, we're looking for implementation of new technologies, wondering whether we can apply for funding from Made Smarter. So the funding has been expanded. Well, it's been announced that it's being expanded to the West Midlands. They're just going through the process of contracting that with the providers of the support. I know Warwick Manufacturing Group is very involved in that process, and Warwick has an SME engagement team. So if you're not already connected, I would say let's connect you with Warwick in the interim. But yes, beyond that, you should be able to get some support. Not quite sure how fast that's all going to come through. And another question for Chris. Can the technology platform be extended to other types of manufacturing equipment beyond CNC? If not, will you do that at some point?
Yeah, so I kind of half answered this earlier. The short answer is yes. As long as power and productivity are inherently linked, then yes, we can. We have decided to focus on CNC machines to start off with, but we're more than open to discussion if you've got types of machines which you're interested in monitoring.
Thank you especially to the speakers. I think it's been a good session. It's the hardcore that are left at the end, isn't it? But yeah, we'll stop there, Anita. Thank you.